Are you guys ready to continue our story, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson? This is the abridged version. That means it's shortened and a little easier to understand. We have some pictures to show you as we go along, as we read, and we are starting off today with Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is titled, The Black Spot. About noon, I stopped at the captain's door with some cool drinks and medicine. He was still lying in bed. He seemed weak, but very stirred up. "Jim, my lad, did that doctor say how long I was to lie here?" "A week at least," I said, walking to him. "Thunder," he cried, "a week? I can't do that. They'll have the black spot on me by then. But I'm not afraid of them. I'll find another place to hide, matey." As he spoke, he rose from the bed, holding on to my shoulder. His grip almost made me cry out. Then he fell back, too weak to sit up. "Jim, you saw that there are seafaring men today?" "Black dog?" I asked. "Ah, black dog," he said. "He's a bad one, but the one-legged man is worse than him. Now, if I can't get away and they give me the black spot, mind you, it's my old sea chest they're after. You get on a horse, you can. You can, can't you? Well, then you get on a horse and go to that dratted doctor. You tell him to gather up officers and bring them to the Admiral Benbow Inn. They'll find them villains here, all of Flint's old crew." He was growing more and more excited. I was worried that he would disturb my ill father, who needed quiet. "I was first mate," he went on, "old Flint's first mate. I'm the only one that knows the hiding place. Flint gave it to me when he lay a-dying. But you won't tell any of this, unless they put the black spot on me, or unless you see that black dog again, or a seafaring man with one leg, Jim. Him, above all." "But what's this, the black spot, Captain?" I asked. "That's an order, mate, to appear before 'em. I'll tell you if they put that on me, but you keep your eyes open, Jim, and I'll share my loot with you, upon my honor." His voice grew weaker. After I'd given him his medicine, he fell into a heavy sleep. I left him thinking about what he meant about a hiding place, the black spot, and Flint. I did not think about this for long. My poor father died quite suddenly that evening, and we became lost in our sorrow. All became a blur, with visits from neighbors, planning the funeral, taking care of the guests at the inn. I had no time to think of the captain and his strange words. Here's Jim with his mother and father who is dying. The captain got downstairs for breakfast the next morning, but he helped himself to rum and had a terrible temper. On the night before the funeral, he was in an awful state. It was shocking, in our sad house, to hear him singing away at his ugly old sea song. He did not speak to me, and I think he forgot what he'd told me that awful night. He was very weak, but he still managed to climb the stairs. Sometimes he put his nose out of doors to smell the sea. He seemed lost in his old world, filled with fears. So things passed until the day after the funeral. At about 3 o'clock on that foggy, frosty afternoon, I was standing at the door for a moment, full of sad thoughts about my father. I saw someone walking slowly beside the road. I knew he was blind, for he tapped a stick in front and wore a green shade over his eyes and nose. He was hunched over and wore a huge old tattered sea cloak with a hood. I never saw in my life a more dreadful-looking person. He stopped in front of the inn and said into the air, "Will some kind soul tell a poor blind man where he might be?" "You are at the Admiral Benbow Inn at Black Hill Cove, my good man," I said. "I hear a voice," he said. "Will you give me your hand, my kind young friend, and lead me in?" I held out my hand, and the horrible, eyeless, soft-spoken creature gripped it hard. I was startled by the pain and tried to get free, but the blind man pulled me close up to him with a yank of his arm. "Now, boy," he sneered, "take me in to the captain, or I'll break your arm." He gave my arm a wrench that made me cry out. "Come on now, march." Excuse me, he snarled. I never heard a voice so cruel and cold and ugly as that blind man. I led him into the parlor where the captain was sitting, dazed with rum. "Lead me straight up to him and cry out, 'Here's a friend for you, Bill.' If you don't, I'll wrench your arm." I was so terrified that I did as he told me. The poor captain raised his eyes. His face was filled with terror and sickness. He tried to stand, but he was too weak. "Now, Bill, sit where you are," said the blind man. Hold out your left hand. Boy, take his left hand by the wrist and bring it near to my right. Here is a picture of the man grabbing Jim's arm. I saw him pass something from the hand that held his stick into the captain's palm. And now that's done, said the blind man. At those words, he suddenly let go of me and skipped out of the parlor and into the road. I could hear his stick go tap, tap, tapping into the distance. The captain and I were both dazed. Then, slowly, he opened his hand and looked sharply into the palm. 10 o'clock, he cried. 6 hours from now. We'll lose them yet. And he sprang to his feet. His hand went to his throat and he began swaying. He let out an odd sound and then fell straight to the floor. I ran to him at once, calling to my mother, but it was too late. The captain had been struck dead by a thundering stroke. I had certainly never liked the man, but as soon as I saw that he was dead, I burst into a flood of tears. It was the second death I had known, and the sorrow of the first was still fresh in my heart. Chapter 4. The Sea Chest. I told my mother all that I knew, perhaps too late. We knew at once that we were in danger. The captain owed us money, but we were afraid to search his room. If I rode to Dr. Livesey's for help, that would have left my mother alone and unprotected. Yet we did not want to stay in the house. Every sound filled us with alarm. The coals falling in the kitchen grate, the very ticking of the clock. There were moments when I jumped in my skin for terror. We decided to go forth together and seek help in the nearby village. With no head coverings, we ran out at once into the foggy night. I was cheered to see the yellow candlelight in the windows of the village. That was the only cheer we were to feel. No soul would return with us to the Admiral Benbow. Several men were willing enough to ride to Dr. Livesey's, but not one would help us to defend the inn. My mother made them a speech. None of the rest of you dare. Jim and I dare. Back we will go the way we came. And small thanks to you, big, hulking, chicken-hearted men. We'll have the chest open. That chest open if we die for it. I'll have the money that's owed to us. Someone gave me a loaded pistol in case we were attacked. One lady let us borrow a bag for the money, if we found any. One lad was to ride to the doctor's in search of help, but that was all that came of our trip to the village. Here's his mother talking to all the villagers. We slipped back along the hedges, noiseless and swift. Our hearts were beating fast, and we did not feel relief until the door of the Admiral Benbow had closed behind us. I bolted the door at once. We stood and panted for a moment in the dark. My mother got a candle. Holding each other's hands, we went into the parlor. The captain lay as we had left him, on his back with his eyes open and one arm stretched out. Pull down that blind, Jim. Oh, pull down that blind, Jim, whispered my mother. Then we must get the sea chest key off that body. On the floor close to the captain's hand was a little round paper, blackened on one side. It was the black spot. Written on the other side was, "You have till 10 tonight," it said. "He had till 10, Mother," said I. "It's now 6. I felt in his pockets. All I found were a few small coins, a thimble, his knife, and a compass. "Perhaps it's around his neck," said my mother. There, sure enough, we found the key. We were filled with hope, and we hurried upstairs to his little room. We knelt beside his sea chest. As my mother opened the chest, a strong smell of tobacco rose from inside. On top lay a suit of very good clothes. Next we found some sailing tools, a small tin cup, sticks of tobacco, 2 handsome pistols, an old Spanish watch, and 5 or 6 curious seashells. These all lay on top of an old boat cloak, white with sea salt. Then we found the last things in the chest, a bundle of papers tied up in oilcloth, and a canvas bag that jiggled of gold. Here's a picture of his hand with the piece of paper and all of the things that they found inside the chest. "I'll take what's owed to me and not a penny over," said my mother. "Hold the bag." She began to count out coins. It took a little while, for the coins were of different countries and sizes, doubloons, pieces of 8, and others, all together. Suddenly I heard the tap-tapping of the blind man's stick upon the frozen road. It drew nearer and nearer while we sat holding our breath. Then it struck sharp on the inn door. We could hear the handle being turned and the bolt rattling. There was a long silence. At last the tapping started again down the road until we could hear it no more. "Mother, take all the coins and let's be going." "I'll take what I have." She jumped to her feet. "And I'll take this to even the count," I said. "Oh, and I'll take this to even the count," I said, picking up the oilskin packet of papers. We left the candle by the chest and felt our way down the stairs. Then we were out the door and running. We had not started a moment too soon. The fog was drifting off and the moon shone quite clear. Less than halfway to the village, in full moonlight, we heard footsteps running. "My dear," said my mother weakly, "take the money and run on. I'm going to faint." Luckily, we were just at the little bridge. I helped her to the edge of the bank. Sure enough, she gave a sigh and fell on my shoulder. I do not know how I found the strength, but I managed to drag her down the bank and a little way under the arc of the bridge. So there we had to stay, hardly hidden and within earshot of the inn. Here's a picture. So they were under the arch of the bridge here, and these shadowy figures searching around. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. I crept back up and could see the road and our door. There I saw 7 or 8 men running hard. Pirates, I thought. A man with a lantern led the way. The next moment I heard the blind man's voice cry, "Down with the door!" "Aye, aye, sir," answered 2 or 3. A rush was made upon the door, and they were surprised to find it unlocked. Again the blind man's voice rang out, as if he were afire with rage. "In, in!" A few dashed in. One called out, "Bill's dead. Search him, you lazy lubbers, and the rest of you get the chest." I could hear their feet rattling up our stairs. The house must have shook with it. The upstairs window of the captain's room was thrown open, and a man leaned out. "Phew," he sighed. He cried, "Someone's been in the chest." "Is it there?" roared Pew. "Oh, Pew, that's a man's name." Pew. "The money's there." "Forget the money. Flint's papers, I mean." "We don't see it here," replied the man. "It's that boy. I wish I'd put his eyes out," cried blind Pew. "Scatter, lads, and find them." "Oh, no." Oh, hold on, there's a picture of the man talking out the window toward the blind man named Pew. I could hear the sounds of the house being searched and torn apart. Then, from over the hill came a distant whistle. "There's the signal," said one. "We'll have to move, mates." "Move my eye," cried Pew. "That boy can't be far. Scatter and look, dogs, or shiver my soul." He cried, "Oh, if I had eyes." "Hang it, Pew, we've got the gold," growled one. "They might have hidden the thing," said another. "Take the gold, Pew. Don't stand here storming." While they quarreled, another sound came from the top of the hill, the tramp of horses galloping, and a pistol shot. The pirates turned at once and ran in every direction. No one remained but Pew, tapping up and down the road, calling out, "Johnny, Black Dog, Dirk, you won't leave old Pew, mates, not old Pew." Just then, 4 or 5 riders swept at full gallop down the hill. Pew turned with a scream and rolled into the ditch. He was on his feet again in a second and made another dash, but he was so confused he ran and fell right under the nearest horse. The rider tried to save him, but it was too late. Down went Pew with a cry that rang high into the night. He fell on his side and gently rolled face down and moved no more. Here he is, right in front of that horse and man. I called out and soon saw who the riders were. One was the boy who had gone from the village to Dr. Livesey's. The rest were officers on their way to investigate a ship docked in Kit's Hole. Pew was dead, stone dead. As for my mother, we carried her up to the village. A little cold water and smelling salts soon brought her back again. I told the whole story to Chief Officer Dance. I went back with him to the Admiral Benbow and found it in a state of smash. I could see at once that we were ruined. "They got the money, you say? Well, then, Hawkins, what were they after? More money?" "No, sir, not money. In fact, sir, I believe I have the thing in my pocket. And to tell you the truth, I would like to get it somewhere safe. To Dr. Livesey's, I thought." To be sure, boy, quite right, said he, and I should report Mr. Pugh's death to Dr. Livesey, or Squire Trelawney, or Trelawney. I'll take you along. I thanked him, and we walked back to the village where the horses were. I told my mother where I was off to, and then I got up behind one of the officers, and we began down the road to Dr. Livesey's. What an exciting adventure. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and we will continue on here in Chapter 5 on Monday. All right, bye.